I'm Leo Walder for Kit Guru. This case is Corsair Carbide 270R, which is a budget design by any standards, and by Corsair standards is just as cheap can be. This windowed version is £65. There's a non-windowed version for £60. And as I say, by Corsair standards, that's really bargain basement. So there are basically two features in this case, and I've removed them both. The front LED fan there I've already taken out because I put a couple of other fans and a radiator in the front. I've left the stock rear fan in place, and the Windows side panel. Thus, which is very basic, no noise deadening material, and it's also suffered on that corner there. Just before I started this video, I dusted the thing down with an air duster, a can of compressed air, and I must have held the can slightly too close to the window, like about yay far away, and the propellant basically froze in that corner and has turned it milky. So there we go, usual complaint with windows that are of the cheap variety is you scratch the things. In this case, I've frozen it. What can you say? So, this case, it has some big claims which are actually justified, which is you can put up to a 360 radiator in the front or 280, and you can put up 240 in the top. You might be able to get a 280, probably not, or a 120 in the rear. So what I've done is I've gone for a 280 in the front. It's an alpha cool 280 with a pair of 140 Corsair ML fans, hence I've taken the stock 120 out. I'll show you that in just a sec. Rest of the hardware, we've got an EVGA Micro 2 motherboard because I thought ATX will go in, but there's no particular need in this instance. A Core i7 5820K, some Corsair Vengeance LPX memory, Corsair Neutron XT SSD on the rear, also Seasonic Prime titanium power supply on the rear. The CPU block is Alpha Cool XPX, which is a new design, and as you can see, it's illuminated. The Alpha Cool radiator at the front, Alpha Cool fittings, the pump reservoir there is EK, and then Mayhem's pastel blue coolant to wrap the whole thing up. The other piece of hardware is the Asus R9 390 graphics card, and I'd like to say I used the same graphics card in the previous build, and a couple of comments said, oh, the thing's sagging, it's not straight. If you look carefully, you'll see the back plate is dead horizontal. The cooler is kind of wedge shaped, so if you look at the bottom edge, it looks like it's sagging like crazy, but it's not. It's in place, it's correct. So not to worry. Now, I'm not going to suggest for one moment you should use an air-cooled graphics card and liquid cool your CPU like this. It doesn't make a lot of sense. The GPU is the hot part, the CPU half as hot, half the TDP. So what I've done, I've really done this just for a styling exercise and to see what you can do. This, as I say, is a really cheap case, and I've gone to town in terms of the CPU cooling. The GPU, the reason I use that great big Asus card is just to show you can put a great big air-cooled graphics card in this relatively compact case. I'll just pull off, actually I'll just turn the power off, and then I'll pull off the front panel, which takes a bit of a tug. Very tight fit, requires a really good pull, can't really get hold of the thing. There's a cutout there for the I/O panel round here, no noise deadening material, air flows in through slots in the side which have mesh covering. Obviously there's no opening for an optical drive. And there is the front of the thing. So we've got the two Corsair ML fans, and here we have the I/O panel. Actually, let's just spin this around. Which, as you would expect, USB 3 and power and reset buttons and headset jacks. Absolutely nothing to be surprised about, except they're on the side rather than the front. So access is reasonably straightforward, provided you have access to that side of the PC. And if I just take off the rear panel, you can see actually the design is quite nifty. So the power supply is tucked away down there. You couldn't see it from the front because of the power supply cover. We've got two 2.5 bays, the SSD there, which is obviously a Corsair own, just snaps in place, and then two 3.5s over there. So all the drive bays are sort of in that vertical plane rather than having sliding caddies in the usual way, all tucked out of sight, and then between the two you've got cable management channel, which works perfectly well. Really, I would say a cheap piece of manufacturing, and it works absolutely admirably. There are plenty of tie-down points for cables. I've used a good few of them, and then essentially at the end you kind of end up jamming the last few cables out of sight under there. Cooling is actually much better than I expected. I honestly thought a budget case, stick some decent hardware in there, and it was going to struggle, and it was icy cold. But it has to be said, there is a downside. The top of the case is entirely mesh and open. It's got slotted mounting positions for 120 and 140 fans. So you can easily put a pair of 120s in there or 140s, but you need to be careful at the top of your motherboard. If you're using a 240 liquid cooler, it's going to go to the front. A 280 would use the whole depth of the top, which is going to clash with the motherboard as sure as eggs. So that's not to be recommended. The thing is, the top being open, no filtration whatsoever. Now, when the air's exhausting, when the thing's running, you wouldn't expect any problems. But when the thing's just sat there turned off or whatever it might be, dust is going to get inside. This makes just no sense. We saw Fractal Design Define R5 a year and a bit ago, and they had these mod vent panels to close the top. When you took them off, the top was just like this. It was open mesh, and it was not good. This year they released a new case we reviewed, and they include a magnetic dust filter, which just drops in place to cover the top. Why Corsair has not done the same is totally beyond me. My guess is that they're viewing this just as the cheapest of cheap cases on the planet, and therefore, who can spend money? And I don't really see that, because it surely couldn't cost a lot. It would make a big difference. To put this in context, this case with the Windows 65, a Phanteks P400, which we like, is 60, Phanteks Pro M, which is slightly more upmarket, 79. So this 65, it's towards the lower end of the market, but you are in enthusiast mid territory. It's cheap, certainly, but it is not free of charge. That filter would have really helped. But actually, beyond that, very few criticisms. It has to be said, the build quality is perfectly sound. I mean, it's clearly built down to a price, but there's no noise deadening whatsoever. I've used quiet components that I could hear the DDC pump making its noise. It wasn't the end of the world, but it was clearly audible. If you have louder components, an air cooler that's roaring away, or fans or some such, this case is going to do nothing to hide the noise. So it's entirely down to the components you choose and how you configure the thing. But this case in that regard is not going to help you a great deal. Having said all that, Corsair Carbide 270R, I really thought I wasn't going to like this one a little bit, and in the end I quite liked it. So there we go, that's a pleasant surprise. So if you like this video, thumbs up. If you don't, thumbs down. If you want more videos from Kit Guru, click to subscribe. I'm Leo Walder for Kit Guru. This is Corsair Carbide 270R.